Alright, man, peace. So as most of you brothers know who were able to witness the docu-series or the sports documentary The Last Dance, what it was able to convey in a microcosm was the unbelievable charisma and magnetism not only of Michael Jordan, but of that 1990s Bulls squad. And it truly put under a spell. It mesmerized the viewers over the course of 5 weeks, and it was able to convert many young people who were never able to witness Michael Jordan play into the understanding of who the greatest basketball player of all time was. Please keep in mind that LeBron James already knows who the greatest basketball player of all time is. That's why he continuously says that he's quote-unquote chasing that ghost in Chicago, despite the fact that he claimed a couple of years ago that defeating Golden State made him the quote-unquote greatest player of all time when he was able to be victorious in 2016. He never really meant that, because if that was the case, why do you claim that you're still chasing that ghost in Chicago? Because he knows exactly what everyone in our age group and above knows. That being that there is only one true quote-unquote king of basketball in the modern era at least, and that's Michael Jordan. And what Jordan was known for above all things, beyond his athleticism, his basketball IQ, his will to win, was his competitiveness. It was almost sadistic, the level in which he wanted to compete. LeBron will never have that because he does not have the mental fortitude. But now, in an attempt to try to spinmeister the narrative that is hovering around Jordan, that he is the greatest player of all time, not only amongst those of us who watch him play, but now the younger generation who finally got to see a glimpse of him in that docu-series The Last Dance, LeBron James's team, led by Rich Paul and Maverick Carter, are trying to introduce the narrative into the overall basketball consciousness or basketball community that LeBron James's competitiveness is at an all-time high and that his will to win verges on the abnormal to the point where he becomes quote-unquote antisocial and all of this other nonsense and buffoonery that everyone knows is not true. LeBron has a lot of gifts as a basketball player. A hyper sense of competitiveness is not one of them. We all know that you can get LeBron James to quit. Everyone knows that. He's quit many times over the course of his career. He quit in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2014, 2015, 2018. You can get LeBron James to quit. He quit in 2017 and he decided to just stat chase so that he could average a triple-double. That's why Kyrie got mad and left. So we know that LeBron James is a quitter. He's competitive as long as he feels like he's going to win. But once the going gets tough, he will quit. Not only on his teammates, but on the game in general. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
According to sources close to LeBron, his competitiveness can be oppressive, overwhelming, and antisocial. The source also told True Hoops' Henry Abbott that LeBron, quote, struggles to be around the normally motivated, gets impatient with those who don't work as hard as he does, and
this sounds like another example of the Last Dance effect. I mentioned this in another video, I think, involving Joel Embiid. You're going to see the after effect of that docu-series The Last Dance trickle down amongst many of the more prominent NBA players as they try to adapt their outlook and their perspective in regards to how they handle themselves and their teammates. You're going to see a lot of this. Situations where prominent players are verbally abusive towards teammates, confrontational, because of what they're learning by osmosis by watching that docu-series or that quote-unquote documentary from Michael Jordan, because they were all compelled to become greater versions of themselves by watching Jordan. I think that everybody was. To see someone that driven, even despite the level of success that he had achieved, I believe that it's going to galvanize a lot of people, certainly players within the NBA. And LeBron James is trying to feed off that energy and adopt it for himself and claim to be like that because he knows that that damn Last Dance, it really put the nail in the coffin of that Jordan versus LeBron debate.
has little tolerance for mistakes. So Shannon, what does this tell you?
It tells me what our
That LeBron James is desperate.
That's how all the all-time greats are wired, Skip.
Yeah, Skip. I mean, shit, at first I was upset. Every morning at 3:47 a.m. that damn alarm clock go off, waking up me in Savannah. But then I said to myself, you know what, when I played with Denver, when I played with Baltimore, I was driven just like that. So I can't get mad if my baby wants us to get up early so he can go do his push-ups.
They can't understand why someone else can't do what they do. They don't realize that's what makes you unique. Only you can do it and make it look easy. Michael Jordan got so upset. Bruh, you might. Kobe got upset. Kobe.
Right, but those guys, they didn't necessarily get upset with their teammates because their teammates couldn't do what they could do. They got upset with their teammates because they felt like their teammates were putting limitations on what they themselves could do.
Everybody can't do this. Skip, and I think all the greats, because I think the thing that made John Elway, and I played with Ray, I think the thing that why we got along so well, they knew that I was equally as invested as they were. I put as much time into my craft as they put into theirs. And what great players don't like, if, okay, you're not as talented, but if they don't see you working hard, it's going to be a problem. And I think LeBron looks at it.
And also, if they don't feel like you're playing hard, that's going to be a problem as well. Because the star players are the ones who are going to have to answer the questions as to why the team lost. So whether the star shoots 14 of 21 or 6 of 21, they're the ones who are going to be blamed if their team does not win the championship.
LeBron, see, Skip, great players' legacy are affected more by other players. See, when JR did what he did, that didn't affect Kevin Love. That didn't affect Tristan Thompson. That don't affect JR. Kyrie losing, that don't affect Kyrie's legacy. The greats are affected, are impacted.
Right, but when JR did what he did, how did that really affect LeBron James' legacy? They wasn't going to win that series. They wasn't even going to win that game.
Hold on. You have so much control on how people view me, and you're not going to put the time, you're not going to invest like I'm investing.
If LeBron James' competitiveness was as oppressive and overwhelming and antisocial as the source claims, he would not have quit on his team in the overtime of that game 1 in the 2018 finals. It wasn't like what JR did led them to lose the game in regulation. They went into overtime and LeBron James quit on his team. So I don't want to hear about how competitive he is.
That would bother him. That I can totally see LeBron being rubbed by people not giving it maximum effort, by people not investing in their body in the gym like he does.
Well, I'm not quite sure if his teammates have the money that it takes to quote-unquote invest in their bodies like he does. I'll leave it at that. Because I think LeBron James is running on some damn tank fuel.
Because it can become a problem, Skip, and we've talked about this a lot. The greater the player, the harder it is for him to pick talent. Because he's like, man, why can't you do that? That is so easy. Look at Skip.
Well, Jerry West has done a great job. Larry Bird has done a great job. I think that certain players have a hard time grasping how role players are going to fit in with other great players. That's why they need a great coach.
Michael, he's still struggling.
And great coaches, by the way, tend to have been marginal to sub-average professional players themselves. People like a Phil Jackson or Pat Riley, who were role players on championship teams back in the 60s and 70s. They went on to become head coaches. Steve Kerr, who was a role player on those Bulls teams in the 90s. They were able to get on the basketball floor and be a relatively important part of a championship team. But they rode the bench enough to be able to watch exactly what greatness was from a front row seat. And I think that helped them. Star players, superstar players, they're far too much deeply involved in the action to have a bird's eye view of how things go. And that's what role players are able to do. They're able to sit on the sideline, many times right next to the head coach or to one of the prominent assistant coaches, and watch how things are transpiring out there on the floor. And they thusly learn how things are supposed to look. Superstar players are not quite sure how things are supposed to look because they're in the midst of the action. So that's why they don't make very good head coaches. Even Larry Bird, who was very successful as a head coach of the Indiana Pacers, the reason why he was so great, and he'll admit this himself, is because he had Dick Harter and Rick Carlisle, who was a role player on those 1980 Celtics teams, as his assistant head coaches.
Had to pick talent with the Wizards, he couldn't do it. He's in Charlotte, he couldn't do it. You look at Isaiah. Isaiah's with the Knicks. People don't realize, Skip, Isaiah Thomas was with the Knicks, and he couldn't build it.
Nope.
Right, but Isaiah Thomas has always been able to pick great talent. He just was unable to put it together.
Normally, it's the players that weren't very good or just average that do a great job of picking talent, with the one exception with Jerry West. He's the one exception. But
he's beyond an exception. Jerry West is the greatest general manager in the history of the NBA.
Guys like
I think Larry Bird has been something.
He did.
He's been very good as an executive. Larry Bird was actually, or has been, a better executive than he was a head coach. He's had a very good eye for talent.
Yeah. He was unbelievable. But Skip, when you look at R.C. Buford and you look at the guys that are doing these teams, they're like, how you get...
Even though I will say this, I mean, Larry Bird had the opportunity to draft both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and he traded away Kawhi to the Spurs.
You pick
R.C. Buford, walk-on college football player.
Now, Tim Duncan, I'm going to say Tim Duncan aside, because everybody was going to take Tim Duncan number one. So you don't get them. But you find a Kawhi Leonard, and you get Tony Parker, and you get the Manu Ginobili's, and you get those guys like that. Skip, when you start picking on down in the draft, Skip, you get top 2, top 3 picks. Come on. I mean, I ain't getting nobody no credit for picking LeBron. You don't get no credit for picking Magic Johnson, Kareem like that. But when you start getting the Kawhis, and you get the Tony Parkers, or you go and you find the Klay Thompsons,
or the Steph Currys.
Okay, now I'm going to give you some credit. But Skip, I'm not surprised. And I just think the thing is because I think people look at LeBron as being a nice guy. And people like Kobe ain't nice.
I don't think that anyone looks at LeBron as being a nice guy, other than suckers and woketies, so-called pro-blacks. And even them, I think they look more at LeBron as being a quote-unquote conscious black man. I don't know who looks at LeBron James as being a quote-unquote nice guy.
Michael ain't nice. And so they have this perception of what they think LeBron is. But behind the scenes, he's just as competitive and driven and gets just as upset when he doesn't feel guys are carrying their weight and he sees what they're doing not to add to the pot.
Believe me, Skip, I know. Because that man come home every night after a loss. And I know what's going to be hell to pay. I say, Savannah, please, make sure that his dinner's warm. Because they just got their ass kicked. And I don't want no problems.
Okay, now back to reality. Here...
Hey, Skip Bayless has no respect for any of Shannon Sharp's LeBron James takes, man. He has no respect for anything that man has to say about LeBron. He's like, okay, back to reality.
Go again. This was LeBron's answer to The Last Dance.
Agreed.
This was a LeBron confidant planting a story right on schedule, right here on the day of the restart. Welcome back game.
Absolutely, because LeBron James, Maverick Carter, Rich Paul, Randy, whoever those dudes are in his group or in his camp, they sat down and diligently watched The Last Dance and took notes. And they said, this is what we can try to use to build up LeBron and market LeBron.
God, we got our basketball back.
Once again, what LeBron James is, he's not the greatest basketball player ever. What he is the greatest politician in the history of professional sports in America. By far. He is the greatest politician in the history of American sports. I've never seen a player who was marketed or who sold himself or marketed himself anywhere near as well as LeBron James and his team does him and his image.
And some confidant close to LeBron James is planting the story that he's every bit the demanding, cold-blooded taskmaster, the leader, the maker of men that we saw Michael Jordan be in the Last Dance documentary. And we're hearing that LeBron is oppressive, that LeBron is overwhelming, that LeBron is even antisocial. And I'm saying, what? That's the biggest bunch of baloney I have ever read.
What?
Absolutely.
You want to lead in?
Well, where did this come from? Somebody, what's the quote here? A source who knows LeBron very well. Okay.
It wasn't me.
We know that because you don't know LeBron at all. Other than you DMing him and stalking him. Your ass don't know LeBron. You wish that you knew LeBron to the level that you talk about him in these morning debates. But you don't know his ass at all, Shannon Sharp. And that's what makes you look so damn pathetic. Because LeBron James knows that all you are is a damn fanboy.
be close to you. I'm pretty sure. My best guess, this came from Rich Paul. It might have come from Maverick Carter.
Probably Maverick or Rich, or them both.
These men are brilliant at what they do.
Agreed.
Genius in image making. They don't.
The Democratic Party, they really should hire Rich Paul and Maverick Carter to try to build up the brand of some of their politicians. Like Joe Biden, he needs all the help he can fucking get. Because the way that they're able to build up LeBron, that's why I've stated it would not surprise me if LeBron tries to run for president in 20 years if this society's still around by then. Because he is so political. Everything with him is smoke and mirrors.
Control the LeBron narrative. They invent the LeBron narrative.
Agreed.
What they did here to fight back The Last Dance, which was a crushing blow to LeBron James' legacy, especially in the leadership vein. Because remember what David Blatt said in the middle of the documentary? He said that Michael Jordan was all about the us, not about the I. And he obviously coached LeBron James. Remember what Mike Malone said? That he coached.
And that's the hilarious thing, is that Michael Jordan's style of play is viewed as being selfish. But his outlook on the team was always towards sacrifice and winning. LeBron James is a player who likes to have the basketball in his hands and claims to be a passer and a distributor. But his view of the team's success is always based around how it's going to impact and affect him individually. That's all he's really about.
For 5 years, an assistant in Cleveland. And Mike Malone said, no, they don't compare because Michael Jordan was the cold-blooded killer who would reach inside your chest and rip your heart out to win a basketball
game. He was like that the first 5 years of his career?
Yeah, he was. And he won a lot of games. He scared the hell out of the Boston Celtics.
No, he didn't scare him. He didn't scare him.
Yeah, they called him, what, Jesus and sneakers?
They called him to go home.
Shannon loves talking about Michael Jordan's first 5 or 6 years in the NBA. When LeBron James did not win shit his first 8 years in the league. I mean, come on.
Stop that, Skip. You can see, here's the thing, Skip. Everybody compares LeBron. They look at LeBron's early career as opposed to when Jordan was winning titles.
Not true. All people do is compare Michael Jordan to LeBron. And if we're going to do that, Michael Jordan played 13 years with the Bulls. He won 6 championships. If you want to count the Wizards' years, where he was just there basically as someone to market the team and build up their value, you can say 6 championships in 15 years. And that's counting the one season where he broke his foot and also the 17 games that he played in his comeback. If you want to count those years as actual years, then it's 13 years with the Bulls and 15 years overall. But if you don't count those years, Michael Jordan won 6 championships in 11 seasons with the Bulls. LeBron James has played 17 years. This is his 17th year, so let's say he's won 3 championships in 16 years. So that's all you have to compare. There's no need to grade Michael Jordan on a curve. Shannon Sharpe always acts as if when people compare those two players, they're not being evaluated according to the same parameters. And it's just not the case.
And it's like, oh, Michael, he was just reaching in. So why didn't he take Larry Bird and McHale's heart? Why didn't he take the Sidney Moncrief and Junior Bree? Why didn't he take their heart?
Because he was not matured enough as a player. And Skip Bayless, he loses a lot of credibility when he tries to act as if Michael Jordan came into the NBA as a winning player. He did not. Michael did not know how to win on the NBA level. But what he did have were the raw ingredients that were necessary for when he was able to be subjected to real instruction by an actual coach, that he could take those intangibles, team them up with the lessons that he learned from the great handler, Phil Jackson, and become a great winner. But he was not a great winner on the NBA level when he first came into the league. And he was not a superstar player. And I'm sure that people will disagree with me on that. I've stated this before. Michael Jordan in his first 6 years was a superstar talent, not a superstar player. You can't be a superstar until you're winning championships. That's just according to my definition of a superstar.
Well,
why didn't he take the Pistons' heart?
He scared them to where they about had a heart attack.
I agree with that. People don't understand. In 1989 and 1990, when the Pistons won the championship, the Bulls were literally the only team that could beat them. In 1989, the Bulls were the only team that defeated them in the playoffs. They beat them twice. In 1990, the Bulls beat them 3 times, and Portland beat them once in the finals. Those were the only games the Pistons lost, the whole playoffs.
He was so difficult. They could not stop him, but those teams were awful around Michael. He needed a little bit of help.
Agreed.
Needed a Scotty. He needed, obviously, some sort of Rodman. He needed somebody to help him a little bit.
And Michael Jordan, at least in the years that those teammates were on his team, he played with the fewest amount of All-Stars of any world champion ever. Now, the year after he left the Bulls the first time, B.J. Armstrong and Horace Grant, as well as Scottie Pippen, made the All-Star team. But on that second three-peat team, none of those players were All-Stars. A lot of people don't realize this. Dennis Rodman did not make the All-Star team for the Eastern Conference in any of those 3 seasons that he played with Jordan.
And all they were was the greatest defensive team I have ever seen in 1998.
So LeBron didn't scare anybody. He scared the Golden State Warriors so much, they went and got a 7-foot assassin. They had one of their guys go out there in the parking lot with a towel on, cry.
Yo, he loved talking about Draymond Green crying in the parking lot. If you let Shannon Sharpe tell it, every free agency signing in the last 15 years has been because teams were scared of LeBron James. If you followed that season, the 2015-2016 season, whenever the OKC Thunder played against Golden State, Kevin Durant would walk over to Steve Kerr and have conversations with him. KD already knew that he was going to sign with Golden State. It was just a matter of whether or not they were going to mess it up. It's like a chick. You know, women say that they knew that they were going to sleep with a guy when they first saw him, and it's just up to the guy to not fuck it up. That was the convention with KD and Golden State. Unless Golden State came up to KD and said, you know, we love to sign you, but you look like an anorexic homosexual, KD was going to sign with them. They would have had to have insulted KD, his mother, and everybody in his family for him to not sign with them.
Game 7, but he didn't scare anybody. Did he not scare after what he did to the bad boy Pistons too? He made the Boston Celtics go trade for KG, go get Ray Allen, because Paul Pierce was a lie. He was not the truth until he got with them.
Shannon gets so passionate in these conversations, man. The fact of the matter is that Paul Pierce was an aging star when they decided to trade for Kevin Garnett as well as Ray Allen. All 3 of them were aging. So that was a great, great move by Danny Ainge and the Celtics. Paul, I think, was 30, 31 years old when they brought in KG and when they brought in Ray Allen. KG was around, 35 years old? And I'm sure that Ray had to have been around 33, 34 years old, because Ray played 4 years at Connecticut and was drafted in 96. So that means that when he came into the NBA, he was 22. He was traded to the Celtics in 07. So that would have been his 12th year in the NBA. So I'm pretty sure he was around 33, 34 years old. So that was a move that those 2 teams made, the Supersonics and the Celtics, the 3 teams, because you have to count the Minnesota Timberwolves. They made those moves because it was mutually beneficial for everyone involved to get those 3 aging stars together to give themselves a chance to finally win. It wasn't necessarily just because of LeBron. But Paul Pierce was in Boston by himself. He needed help.
Michael Jordan put the fear of God in his teammates. You saw it. You got to see it live and on tape, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's not this guy. This guy is too nice of a guy. No. This guy is more about himself than about his team.
Agreed.
It's more about he needs the credit and he wants none of the blame, and it's always credit, blame. Michael Jordan didn't care about credit or blame.
Agreed.
He cared about winning.
Yeah, hold on, wait a minute. He didn't want Doug Collins to get fired because the triangle offense was coming and it was about moving the ball.
Lies. Believe me, Michael Jordan wanted Doug Collins to get fired. In that documentary, when Michael Jordan said he was not a Phil Jackson fan, what he meant was he was not a fan of the triangle offense. He liked the fact that Doug Collins ran the offense through him, and Michael did have issues with trusting his teammates. But the entire Bulls organization knew that Doug Collins was too emotionally unstable to ever be a championship-level head coach. Doug Collins would cry in the locker room during pivotal wins or pivotal losses. You can't have a coach like that. Michael Jordan co-signed on Doug Collins getting fired. He was fine with it. He liked Phil Jackson because he knew that Phil Jackson knew what he was talking about. What he didn't like was the quote-unquote equal opportunity offense, or what he thought was going to be an equal opportunity offense. So Phil Jackson and Tex Winter, they compromised with Michael, and they allowed him to still show his great gifts and scoring talents within the framework of the offense, and it made Michael Jordan a better player. But Michael Jordan, he co-signed on Doug Collins getting fired.
Resisted. Did we not watch the same Last Dance?
Did we not watch the same Last Dance, Mousel?
Win championships.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he did.
No. That's not what he said. That's not what he said. He said, I wanted the ball. He said, I want the ball in my hands late in the ball game as opposed to Bill Cartwright.
Right, well, you know what happened, Shannon Sharp? When Phil Jackson became the head coach of the Chicago Bulls, late in the game, the ball was in Michael Jordan's hands. It was not in Bill Cartwright's hands.
Oh, to this one. That's what he said.
Well, that's how he won. He won 6 MVPs and 6 championships. What happened in the ultimate Game 6 at Utah? What happened? He just said, get out of my way. He scored 45 points. His teammates scored 44. That's the closeout Game 6. And he held the pose on Byron Russell. Remember that?
Yeah, I do, Skip. I'm not debating that. All I'm saying is that we look at these guys different when they're more alike as far as makeup. Okay, you want to...
I would agree with that. I think that all great players have more likenesses than differences. But this is a political ploy by the LeBron James camp. To say all of a sudden that his competitiveness can be oppressive, overwhelming, and antisocial, man, please. They're mistaking competitiveness with his spoiled bratness, because that's what he is. He's a spoiled fucking brat. When things don't go LeBron's way, he curls up in a ball and he wants to isolate himself because he thinks that he's so much better than all of his teammates that the L that was hung on his franchise should not be applied to him.
LeBron is not the scorer, or he doesn't have the ferocity or the look of all that other stuff, but they're more alike internally than we previously thought, Skip, because all great players are wired a certain way. And Skip, you don't realize that you're so much more... Skip, when I was in high school and can do things, I didn't look... But I was like, well, damn, I'm the only one on my football team that got a high school scholarship. They got a college scholarship. And then I go to college and I go to the... Well, I'm the only one that go play in the NFL. And then it dawns on you.
And then it dawns on you that I'm special. You know, Skip, for years I looked in the mirror, I said, dear God, why'd you give me all this hot chocolate sexiness? Got me here grown with pecs just popping, running with 4.240 with a 48-inch vertical leap. Hands that's like a vice grip. I'm in the NFL, Skip. I'm just catching passes from quarterbacks and from women. I'm like, dear God, why you make me so special? Thank you, Lord.
When I get to the NFL, I'm like, well, shit. Excuse me.
Hey, yo, Shannon is something, though. And then got it. I'm like, shit.
Everybody, it was great in high school and great in college. Why y'all can't do this?
Okay, you're wired way differently than 23 is what.
I agree with that. I think as an athlete, Shannon is a lot more like Michael Jordan than he is like LeBron James. He might not want to admit that or understand that because he was so upset with the way that Michael Jordan conducted himself within the documentary. But I think that Shannon Sharp was watching the documentary as someone who was looking for things to dislike about Michael Jordan, and he found those things.
You were wired closer to Jordan than he is wired to Jordan.
Agreed.
Think so?
Yes.
I don't think so. I really don't.
This guy, in Game 1, what was it, 2018?
Oh, did you?
Well, you brought it up. The J.R.
didn't bring
Smith
that.
play. Yes, you did. He just said, I don't want to associate with these guys. They were tied with Golden State going to overtime.
Thank you, sir. And he gave up on the team.
And he sits a seat apart from his team
what a
as
seat.
if to distance himself, socially and emotionally distance himself.
Okay, now...
That's true. LeBron was the first person to socially distance. Who the hell could have knew?
His
Now
team,
everybody going to be 2 seats apart now. What's going to be the excuse now?
well, you know what he did. And then he pouted. And then
He did not.
He quit on his team. He wouldn't even take a shot for 2.5 minutes
Yeah,
ago.
Agreed.
Until they were down 7 points before he took a shot.
Skip.
Scored 2 points in overtime.
Skip.
He quit.
Skip.
You know it, and I know
But
it.
And I know it too.
That's so opposite. That's un-Jordan-esque.
they came to get the ball out of his hands. You knew that. I know that.
What have they been doing the whole game? He'd scored, what, 49 points
Right.
in regulation?
And they say, you know what? If somebody else goes off and beat us, we can live with that.
The reason why they were able to come and get the ball out of his hands, to Skip Bayless's point, is because LeBron James allowed them to take the ball out of his hands because he was looking for a way out. He'd given up. He has a lot of Mike Tyson in him. LeBron James to Michael Jordan is very similar to the dynamic of Mike Tyson to Muhammad Ali. Very dominant physically, but mentally just doesn't have it.
Not going to allow 23 to get hot in overtime and beat us after we fought back in this game.
Shannon Sharp, if LeBron James wanted to shoot the basketball, he could have shot the basketball. But beyond that, let me also say this, because they run the LeBron James system and everything runs through LeBron James, it's much more difficult for LeBron to give the basketball to someone else and nullify the double team by catching the ball in the low post and working on his defensive man from a different location on the floor. Everything LeBron James does has to start from the top of the key because he's terrible off the basketball. You know, when he's operating on different locations on the basketball floor and he does not have the ball in his hands, he's nowhere near as effective. He needs the ball in his hands.
Look, you and I both know nobody's talking about D Wade. I mean, D Wade was a great player, but when like LeBron's legacy is impacted more. Jordan's legacy, Bird, Magic, these guys' legacies are impacted more. You know that, Skip.
Well, I will count Dwayne Wade as one of those players whose legacy was impacted by him winning a championship in 2006. That 2006 championship run is always going to be viewed as one of the great championship runs that any player's ever had, even with all the fake free throws.
Just don't try to sell me that he's a heartless, profane tyrant when it comes to leading his teams.
Agreed.
Leaders come in many different shapes. The great leaders understand. Okay, you think Coach Belichick talked to Lawrence Taylor like he talked to Tom Brady?
Well, he wasn't the head coach yet. I think he's talked to a lot of great players in New England that way.
You think Bill Parcells talked to Lawrence Taylor like he talked to everybody else? He called Terry Glenn sheep. You think he ever said that to Lawrence Taylor?
Well, I don't think that Lawrence Taylor ever did anything where Bill Parcells could possibly confuse him for a female, whether it was his name or anything else. But I do think, knowing Bill Parcells, that there were many occasions where he would light Lawrence Taylor up and tear a hole in him if he needed to.
Absolutely not. You have to understand, as a leader.
I don't know that for sure. I don't know that.
You know LT. You know LT.
Well, it's hard to criticize his performance.
Also understand that LT looked at Bill Parcells almost like a father figure. So he would take things from Bill Parcells that he wouldn't take from anybody else. I mean, literally, after Bill Parcells left the team, LT's on record as saying he didn't want to play football anymore, but he just held on for 3 or 4 more years just because he had nothing else better to do.
You know LT, I know LT.
Yeah, I do.
LT was wide different.
I got it. Okay.
So, but my thing is, Skip, is that when you're a leader, and you're a leader of men, and you're trying to lead men, the great leaders understand the buttons that they need to push to get each guy to operate at their maximum level. Mm-hmm. All Jordan knew how to do was pull teeth. Sometimes you got to, get a kid a lollipop.
Okay.
Right, but Shannon Sharp, do you know for a fact that all Michael Jordan knew how to do was pull teeth? Or are you saying that based on the documentary? I mean, you wasn't there day in, day out.
He's all lollipop.
There you go.
The buttons he pushes are lollipop buttons. He's good guy. He's good. It's all positive reinforcement.
Yes.
I love you, man. Let's hang out.
Let's do this.
Yeah, I love you, man. Come over to my house for Halloween. And then by next February, I'm going to have you traded.
Here's some beats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, like that.
Buy you a suit. That's what I mean. That's okay.
Yeah, he's not going to terrorize people the way Michael Jordan terrorized.
No, he ain't going swinging on people. And that's great on his part.
Okay.
LeBron James giving people birthday gifts. Michael Jordan giving people hands.
Well, don't tell me oppressive, overwhelming. Don't tell me he's antisocial. He is none of the above.
He is. He can be.
Narrative.
He can be.
Yeah.
You antisocial.
No? Well, so are you.
No, I ain't. No. Don't put me in that case. We're different. We're wide different.
Really?
You're on record as saying that you're antisocial, Shannon Sharp. That's probably why you're so willing to do a bunch of stupid shit, because you don't care anyway. You hide in your house playing with your dogs all day. But, all jokes aside, most people who are gifted can be categorized as quote-unquote antisocial.
I mean, you're the loner who just sits at home by yourself.
I am a loner. I mean, that's why the quarantine didn't bother me.
Yeah.
You guys are two of the most competitive individuals I have ever been around.
But anyway, that's basically it on that, brothers. We'll see how things go for LeBron James and the Lakers in this year's playoffs. But make no mistake about it, this was another political ploy by LeBron James Incorporated to try to figure out a way to set the stage for a great playoff run so that they once again can inject themselves into the Michael Jordan all-time greatest basketball player conversation. So peace.